when I come to India. There's always some excitement in the air. And I think now the excitement level, at least from the Viksit Bharat vision, is very high. Right? What our chief executive of the country, Prime Minister Modi, what he has done is he has given us a very bold vision. He's really bold to be a $30 trillion economy by 2046, 2047, by 15th of August 2047. Right? It's a bold vision, and he has done his job. He has given us a very ambitious target. They have also identified the sectors into which the government would invest the money, the sectors that are most likely to cause the GDP to grow by that much. And they are funding those efforts. Now the question is, what will we, the leaders from the industry, the leaders, the technocrats in the government, what is it that we will do to help attain that vision? For example, infrastructure projects. Right? The only reason we are investing in infrastructure projects is to grow the GDP. Right? If the execution of these infrastructure projects does not lead to a growth in GDP, what is there? If the profitability of these projects, as one of the speakers, Dr. Kishore, had talked about, is abysmal for 5%, how will we grow the GDP? If the project timelines keep getting extended, how will we grow the GDP? And Mr. Chaudhary talked about, the government is estimating projects at 100 and bids are coming in at 60. Something is wrong. And we've got to challenge that. Right? So the national strategy is clear. But the performance of the industry now has got to align with that national strategy and the vision. And what do I mean by that? The gross capital formation, the fixed capital formation, which really measures how much capacity you have in the economy to either do the logistics or to manufacture goods or to provide services. How much capacity is there in the economy to accomplish the GDP goals? Right? If you look at the capital formation trends, they have not budged. In fact, the capital formation is falling behind the GDP growth targets. The second aspect is the productivity. Right? So you can grow GDP only by two mechanisms. Assuming the demand is there, your GDP will only grow either you have capacity to produce more goods and more services, or you are getting more productivity from the assets you have. Right? Similar, for example, in the roads, what is the meaning of productivity in the roads? Right? Roads are not designed to measure how many cars you can fit on the road. Roads are designed to flow the traffic through the road. So if you are not increasing ultimately the haulage through the roads, you are accomplishing nothing. If your traffic if you're talking urban infrastructure, if the traffic is flowing at 5 kilometers per hour, are you really contributing to the GDP? You can build the roads, right? There will be a temporary bump in GDP because you have spent money on the infrastructure. But this is all borrowed money. Right? What have you accomplished? Nothing. So the point being, the industry has to catch up with the profitability of these projects, with the formation of capital, and the industry has to catch up with the productivity. And what do I mean by the catch up? It's not a small incremental goal. Right? Let's look at the numbers. The GDP for this fiscal year that is about to end will be somewhere around $3.8 trillion. The best 5-year moving average that the country has achieved in the past is 8%. If for the next 22 years, there is no COVID, there is no war with a nation, there is no recession in the worldwide economy, which means every year we grow at 8%, what will we get to? $21 trillion. But do you think the world is perfect? Do you think something like COVID will not happen again? if you are the chief executive, are you going to assume that everything will go perfectly for 21 years, 22 years? No. Let's just say about 5 years will be lost because some disruption will happen. There'll be some disruption caused by the president of the country that I come from, Mr. Trump. There'll be some disruption from some epidemic. There'll be some disruption from maybe some global conflict. Something will happen, right? If those disruptions happen, what will we get to? Even with the best growth rate that we have achieved, $14 trillion. What we have achieved in the last 4 years, post-COVID, so this is COVID and the year after COVID, you discount that. In the last 4 years, we have achieved 7%. What does that get to? $17 trillion if the world is perfect. But the world is not perfect, so it will get us to $12 trillion. The rate at which we need to grow is 13%. But that is the gap. The accelerating the growth rate, whose job is it? Is it the government's job or is it the industry's job? How many people here think that accelerating this growth rate beyond what the government has already done, set the target, identify the sectors from where growth can happen, allocated money to those sectors, what else can the government do? So how many of you think that accelerating this growth is the job of the government, not the private industry? Let's look at the challenge. The challenge is, instead of $12 trillion, we have to achieve $30 trillion. At 7% projected growth rate with some disruptive years, we're going to achieve $12 trillion. What we need to achieve is $30 trillion, 2.5 times. This is the gap that the industry has to bridge. Right? What does that mean? As I said, either you increase the productivity or you increase the capacity. How do you increase the capacity faster? By shrinking the project timelines. Right? That is the only way. The government has already borrowed all the money. It is raising all the taxes it can. There is no more room for borrowing. There is no more room for adding taxes. Right? We have to form capital by recycling the capital that we have faster, by reducing the project timelines. Dr. Kishore again had talked about the payback period. Right? The payback periods, and this is not just India, by the way. This is not just India. This is across the world. The payback periods are abysmal. Right? If I am a finance person, why would I invest in an infrastructure project with payback periods of 10 years, 12 years, 15 years? It doesn't make sense. Right? So, reducing the project timelines by 40 to 50%. But that it's not about 2, 3, 4, 5% reduction in timelines. It's not about doing projects on time. It's about whatever the projects are taking today, they have to be done in about half the time. Whatever productivity we are getting from our steel mills, whatever output, whatever haulage we are getting through our roads and our transportation systems, whatever patient flow that we are getting from our hospitals, from the same capacity, we have to produce 50% more. Any disagreements on this? Right? Now, this might look like a tall order. For 22 years, with maybe allowance for disruption of 5 years. Right? That is the track we have to get on today. Every year we don't get on this track, this number starts going up like this. 30 to 50% productivity increase. Right? It looks like a tall order, but is it? And I say, who cares whether China did it or not? Who cares? India has to do it. We have to do this. Regardless of whether someone else has done it or not, we have to do it. Why can't we do it? Right? Now you'll say, okay, fine, but How do we get more productivity from our assets? How do we shrink the project timelines? Because we heard about all the issues, government approvals and payment issues and uh, issues that you find when you start building the tunnels. You find unexpected conditions. And by the way, you can think of all those as that is the reality of a project. Right? You're not going to change reality. Projects, by definition, will encounter those uncertainties. They will. How do you achieve perfect results in an imperfect world? Right? Is it possible or not? Next slide, please. It's not going to come from incremental changes. I'm stuck in a traffic jam. I get Google Maps. Right? Google Maps can tell me, okay, you know what? You're going to get to where you are going, which is only 5 kilometers away, about 50 minutes from now. You feel happy, at least now I have more predictability. Another 10 minutes later, it says, no, maybe you will get there in 30 minutes. Another 10 minutes later says, nope, it will get you tonight. This real-time monitoring and control is like Google Maps. It doesn't do anything for your projects. It does not do anything for your projects. Right? Now, the person, let's say I'm a driver and I see I have to come to this conference, and instead of getting here at 9 o'clock, my GPS says I'll be getting there at 9:10. So I start changing lanes. Right? I start not following the signals. Does that get me here faster? But that is what you're trying to do in your projects. Firefighting. And you want more and more technology to fight these fires. It's not going to, right? What you have to solve is the traffic jam problem. What you have to solve is reduce the traffic jam. Same thing in projects, same thing in factories. Right? Real-time monitoring and control is not going to do anything for you. I was lucky very early in my career. How many of you might have read this book or heard of this book? You have. You have. Okay. I'll tell you something about this book. This book was written by an Israeli physicist on factories. Right? I read this book. I was 25 years old. In this book, there's a plant manager who has to increase the production of his factory, and if it does not, the factory becomes unviable. The factory is going to get shut down, and the town is going to lose a lot of jobs. And this was the town that he had grown up in. Right? So he goes in, and everything is bad. Costs per unit are very high, inventories are very high, cash flow is a problem. Right? And then he is forced to think radically differently. Almost the opposite. Almost the opposite. Right? I'll give you examples of these opposite things. Don't focus on unit costs. Don't focus on cost reduction. Focus on increasing output. Right? That was one of the things. The other thing was, let's not try to create more real-time systems. Let's figure out where we eliminate the need for this real-time monitoring. If you are on a road where predictively you can always get from here to here in 10 minutes, you don't need a real-time monitoring system. Right? So it was radical thinking. And the last piece of radicalness here was, and this is a lesson I have carried throughout my life, which is the real world might be complex, but the job of leaders is not to tackle complex with complexity. The job of leaders is to distill simplicity from that complexity, and you will always find the answer. You will always find the answer. Why? Because in management, complicated solutions do not work. You create 50 different metrics, you are confusing the people below you. Complicated solutions don't work. Complicated scheduling doesn't work. Right? So I took this book. I was 25 years old. I was working at Xerox. And, I was a mechanical engineer from IIT. But this was electronic boards manufacturing, so I did not do anything about electronic boards. Plus, anyway, even in mechanical engineering, I graduated with a B grade. Right? So I was not a good mechanical engineer either. Right? So I go in and using this book, in 3 months, we make it the best performing factory in the entire company. So this was the company that was producing electronic board that go into all the copiers, printers. So it was a bottleneck for the entire company. Right? So we were able to debottleneck this part and affect the production of the entire company. Now, after that, I have worked with lots of companies, and nowhere have I come across a situation where you cannot increase the output by 30 to 50% just with a couple of simple changes. Nowhere. Projects, the same thing. I have not come across a project where we cannot, given all the issues that are happening in the project that happen all the time, that you cannot get projects done in half the time. Right? You can. The proudest moment for me was the culmination of all these things. Right? And I have not applied these lessons just in manufacturing. So in 2023, I was asked to run Africa's largest coal mine. And I'll give you the meaning of that, what largest coal mine means. 16,000 people, 10% of the country's GDP, Mozambique. Right? And it was not being run by some rinky-dinky operators. It was being run by Vale. Vale is a well-known name in mining, Brazilian conglomerate. Right? The mine was making a loss of $12 million a month. So this had been bought over by an Indian business house, but they were making a loss of $12 million a month. This is day one, right? I was given this job. I had never seen a mine before. I had never seen a mine before. On day one, I find out we're going to be making a loss of $12 million a month. Right? We got to turn this around. The shutting down this mining is not an option. We have to make it profitable. And on top of that, out of 77 trucks, these are mining trucks, massive trucks where the tires are taller than the highest height of the ceiling. Out of 77 trucks, only 40 trucks were working, 39 trucks. So with half the production capacity, we had to increase production. Right? Without getting into details, not only did we have to increase the production from the mines in the wash plant. So once you dig the coal from the earth, you have to wash it. Right? Separate the dirt from the coal. The yield was 11%. It was supposed to be about 20%. So we had to increase the yield also. Now, once the coal had been produced, there was a single track line, 900 kilometers, which went from the mine to the port, and trains came back. Right? We had to increase the haulage capacity of those trains. Problem is clear? Right? With only two simple changes, in 3 months, we were at $60 million profit a month. From $12 million loss a month, our yield went up from 11% to 17%. The mining output in terms of the raw production, the basic run of mine production, went up by 50%. But the overall production of the coking coal, which was the primary coal, went up by about 150%. Right? And trains that were taking 105 hours to run, 115 hours to run, back and forth, we could not add more trains because getting the trains, first of all, required money. Secondly, the lead times were long, about 1.5 years. So we were running the trains with one simple change. We were running the train in 65 hours. Right? The point of all this being, and we can get into the details of the solution, right? I'll give you a hint of the solution. Because I was not from mining, I did everything that the mining people, opposite of everything that the mining people do. Because I did not have any experience in logistics. There was a person from Indian Railways who was running the logistics part. I did everything opposite of what they were doing. Everything. Right? And we turned it around. What did we do in mine? We said we have trucks. So what they would have was a real-time monitoring system where trucks, the moment there was as a roadblock in the trucks or an excavator went down, they would reroute the trucks to another part of the mine. This mine was very big. It was bigger than New Delhi, right? So they would reroute the truck. Said, no, we're not going to change the direction of the truck. The trucks would stay where they are, right? We are going to stop this real-time monitoring and the trucks stay where they are. And the other principle that the mining industry operates on is utilization, right? So you're monitoring the utilization of excavators, trucks, dozers, graders. And in spite of that, the utilization was an abysmal 50%, 45%. I said, no more utilization. So this was the second part. Instead of utilization or efficiency, the emphasis has to be on flow. Instead of costs, the emphasis has to be on the output. Right? It's very simple. And we did that. And, 3 months later, we got to $60 million of profits. I'll not bore you with the entire story, but the two points. Coal prices dropped by 40%, just like that. Right? We increased the production again. We increased the production again by another 60-70% with another couple of few simple changes. Point being, in a mine that was being run by a company that knows mining, we were able to find so much inefficiency and get such dramatic improvements. But the prouder moment for me in Mozambique was, there was a district health center. And I'll paint the picture for you. This is a country where people make $35 a month, right? No access to healthcare. Children are dying in this district health center. You come to the hospital and you have to wait for 5 hours, right? By the time you're done waiting, you're dead. The time to get an appointment, 2 weeks out. People stop seeking healthcare. In 3 weeks, we improved the output, the patient flow by 80%. Waiting time went down from 5 hours to 1 hour. And the time to get an appointment from 2 weeks out to tomorrow, with a couple of simple changes. Right? Now let's talk about projects. Enough about all the other kinds of operations. Let's talk about projects. The first example I will give you is Larsen and Toubro. So they were building a shipyard in Kattupalli. Right? Being L&T, they were building a shipyard with a ship lift. There's a company called Syncrolift, which has 90% of the world's market share. Safest thing for them was to go to Syncrolift and ask them to supply the lift. L&T said, no, we're going to do it ourselves. No, we're going to learn how to make lifts so that we can become prime for making these ship lifts. The benchmark for Syncrolift was 25 months. L&T did the ship lift in 24 months. This ship lift was 25 months longer than the largest ship lift that Syncrolift had made. To boot, the steel plates that are required for these ship lift, they were coming from Korea, special steel. The ship got stuck on the sea for 5 months because the carrier went bankrupt. Despite that, L&T delivered this project in 24 months. Right? So all kinds of things that you can imagine in project. I mean, they had land approval issues. They had all kinds of issues. But they managed to get the project done in 24 months. Another example, a hot strip mill example from Jindal Group. I think the industry average is about 46 months. The best benchmark, 35, 36 months. They did it in 27, 28 months. Right? Now, and this is where the leadership comes in. This is where the leadership, after beating the world record, right? Now, Mr. Jindal wants to beat the world record again, which means his own record. That is how much inefficiency actually is there in projects. But that is the kind of ambition you need to succeed. Just because the world record is 36 months does not mean I cannot do it in 26 months. And just because I did it in 26 months the last time does not mean I cannot do it in 23 months the next time. That there is that much inefficiency in projects. Last example I will give you, actually 2 examples I want to give you. With your schools, right, doesn't matter. They build schools And building the schools on time is important, because if the school building is not ready, then you lose a whole year of a school year, revenues are gone, right? They were doing 1 to 2 schools per year. They went from that, and cash trap, right? They went from that to 5 to 6 schools per year, partly by doing projects faster. But the bigger part where we started the story, capital formation, by recycling this money faster, right? They had capital to start doing 5 to 6 schools per year, right? That is the opportunity in projects. Right? It is possible. Going into the details of the solution is kind of difficult, but let's go back to a traffic jam analogy. If there's a traffic jam on the road, how do you solve that problem? What is the way to solve? Is it to build more roads? Does building more roads solve the traffic jam problem or make it worse? Make it worse, right? The only way to solve the traffic jam problem is to take some cars off the road. And when the cars are flowing at 5 kilometers per hour, they start going at 40 kilometers per hour, which means the cars that you took off the road, after the traffic has started flowing, you put them at the right time back in the traffic, they will also get to their destination faster. And the cars you left on the road will definitely get to their destination faster. Right? That is the simple magic in projects. There's just work going on and everyone is running around a squirrel. Right? There is a Rahim's Doha, ek hi saade sab sade, sab saade sab jaye. Right? That is what happens in projects. In English, the equivalent is, you chase too many rabbits, you catch none. You chase one rabbit, you will catch it. Right? In projects, that kind of focus is important. Right? And every project can get done faster. Within a project, instead of starting work on the more constrained your resources are, the less the amount of work in process. Right? So now I want to kind of give some observations from the panel discussion. There was this discussion about, government is estimating at 100, contractors are coming at less than 100, projects are getting delayed. I don't know the answer, but I'm pretty sure it's close to what I'm going to tell you. Which is, the government already has the cost estimate. You are talking about AI. Use the AI to figure out the cost estimate. Tell the contractor this is the cost. And the company that will deliver the project fastest will get the award. Just reverse the thinking. Right? And you will get paid for your cost outflows as you incur the cost, but you will make your profit only when you finish the project. Right? Simple. Second part is, you tell the contractors, you can do an estimate. This contractor has got only so much capacity, right? Because the other thing Mr. A.K. Singh pointed out was, people are looking at their order books because it affects the stock market, whatnot, right? Very simple. You tell the contractors, based on your previous history of project execution, we think you can handle only so many projects at a time. You finish one project, you will get the next. Right? Now, they will start figuring out how to do projects faster. Right? So, you need to think radically different. If we are going to go achieve this $30 trillion, it is achievable. Because the productivity, performance potential is there in the Indian industry across all sectors. Because projects can be done in half the time. The potential is there. Right? But as the first step, the industry has to own the vision. You have to set targets for your own companies to improve the return on assets by 50%. Whatever your historical return on assets is, you set a target for improving it by 50%. Whatever you have demonstrated in projects in terms of timelines, set a target for cutting it down by half. Right? I can promise you, the solution is not complicated. If you set those targets and step back and just have a discussion with your team, you will find the answer to increasing the productivity by 50%, hence the return on your assets by 50%, and reducing project timelines by 50%, hence generating more cash faster for future investment. It's possible. It has been done. The only difference here is, we are talking about doing this at a mass level across India. Right? That is why the industry leaders have to own this vision, and they have to, instead of worrying about the stock market, they have to start worrying about just setting very aggressive goals for themselves. What we first and foremost want to provide is this message of simplicity, right? And sometimes things will be so simple that you don't need outside consultants. Once you find the simplicity, you will be able to implement the solution themselves, right? What we want is India to get to her $30 trillion by August 15, 2047. Thank you very much.
Realization Technologies. Radical simplicity, radical results.